Power systems have always been an important part of storytelling. At a glance, you can think of series like Saint Seiya, Sailor Moon, and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure as laying an admittedly impressive foundation for the power systems of today. While power systems are a given when writing a story with any kind of superhuman combat, the skill gap between writers lies in the ability to make individual power systems distinctive and eye-catching. Many people agree that the Cursed Energy system from Jujutsu Kaisen is one of the better power systems in recent memory. Quirks from My Hero Academia have their place on the totem pole as well. However, there's a series that I feel deserves much more love than it's receiving during its run. A series that I feel has one of the best power systems in new gen anime. Hell's Paradise is currently on its second season, displaying some of the most visually impressive combat sequences I've ever seen, as well as boasting one of the most well-developed worlds to come out of this generation of any manga. However, all of this, while amazing in its own right, practically pales in comparison to Hell's Paradise's greatest strength, its power system. What takes an already interesting concept and propels it to new heights, what forces the characters to discover themselves and explore their deeper potential as people, what drives the plot forward and actively creates the narrative that we're following is not some special MacGuffin or some rudimentary goal, but the power system itself. So let's dig a little deeper into Hell's Paradise, exploring its characters, battles, and themes to understand how they all originate from and strengthen the power system. Let's talk about how Hell's Paradise developed the best power system. Tao is the central power system of Hell's Paradise, and in concept, it can be compared to a vast majority of other more popular power systems. Haki from One Piece, Ki from Dragon Ball, or simply Chi, which is a Chinese martial arts principle that inspires most anime power systems. But where Hell's Paradise differs from its contemporaries is in its narrative application of Tao, starting with its introduction. Episode 7 of Hell's Paradise is the first time in the series where we see Tao used in real combat. Gabimaru, our protagonist, finds himself chasing down a mysterious character who uses Tao against him in self-defense, and what results is an insightful interaction. Gabimaru describes Tao as something different from brute strength, a different kind of strength entirely, and because of this introduction, the audience is forced to ask some very important questions. The basis of at least the first season of Hell's Paradise is the observations of the characters. They're not from this land, and the tension in the series comes from their race to find answers to their seemingly unanswerable questions. Tao being the second biggest question of them all at this point. This gives a reason for the audience to learn the power system with the characters while also maintaining the intrigue that comes with the unknown. At this point, the Tensen, the main antagonists of Hell's Paradise, are seemingly unbeatable, unable to be damaged in any significant way, and using what we now know as Tao near perfectly, making the gap between them and our protagonist seem that much more insurmountable. The discovery of Tao at this point in the narrative suggests a bridge for that gap that keeps the audience invested as they wait to see what true Tao mastery looks like. Shion will be our first example of that mastery. A blind swordsman, Shion had to learn to fight with extremely limited use of his senses, and so the narrative uses him to educate us further on what Tao actually is. His impaired senses, ironically enough, give him a head start over the other characters, as Tao is a practice in universe rooted in principles of meditation, of shutting out your environment to increase the amount of valuable information you take in. Shion explores and deepens his Tao mastery by fighting with the monsters on the island and confronting his limitations head on, surpassing them and deepening his understanding of himself, not only as a fighter, but as a person. Self-discovery, if you will. But if that was it, then Tao wouldn't be so interesting, would it? There's still something more to be explored. Its usage as a means of character exploration. Gabimaru is doubtlessly the central protagonist of Hell's Paradise. He's the strongest in the main party, it's his motivations that keep the plot going, and we're mostly seeing the story from his perspective. So how does he engage with Tao and deepen his understanding of himself? Well, I touched on it earlier. His motivations. Gabimaru is introduced in the Hell's Paradise storyline as an unkillable, unfeeling shinobi, but through a chance skirmish with Yamada Asaemon Sagiri, he's forced to face death and rediscover his reason for living, his wife. This is more than a childish motivation for Gabimaru. It affects the way he engages with the world around him as a whole, and even more so, it affects the way he engages with Tao. Gabimaru represents both the pros and cons of this system, and it reflects in his personality. As he builds bonds with his comrades, advance, his Tao deepens and he grows stronger. When he overuses Tao in the process of learning it, he loses his memories and reverts in both strength and personality, almost dying in the process. It takes Sagiri climbing on top of him and forcing their Taos to connect for him to return to his usual self. After all, Tao is not physical strength. It's a different kind of strength. Mental, emotional strength. Where at one point Gabimaru would die for the sake of his mission, with his development, his mission changes completely. His mission is to live, and the life of the individual is irreplaceable. Such conviction is enough to strengthen Gabimaru's Tao, but what of an immortal life that lives with no purpose other than for living's sake? How do the Tensen engage with Tao? The Tensen are the first exposure we get to uniquely intelligent life on the island. They're smarter and stronger than all the other creatures, and as I said earlier, their Tao mastery at a base level is beyond anything the other characters could hope to match. They change biological sexes at will to better serve their purposes. Issues of compatibility and personal preference are nothing to them because intimacy is their natural state of being, and they have an almost perverse obsession with Tao and with power in general. Mudon is the first Tensen to be defeated in the series, with Shion and Sagiri being the main two to do the job. Mudon's loss represents a turning point for the Hell's Paradise narrative, and it serves as an indicator of what's to come. The Tensen are raid bosses in their simplest form, and it will usually take more than one character to defeat them, as they're not likely to stay dead unless their weak spot, a little below their navel, is targeted. Their existence in the narrative is one that is coexistent with our main party. The Tensen rely on Tan to sustain their immortality, refined Tao from humans who've been converted into flower Tao, effectively becoming an incomplete version of the elixir of life, the closest thing to a MacGuffin this story has. This creates a reason for conflict, as well as a reason for escalation as seen in Season 2, where it's revealed that the Tensen want to threaten the mainland. These immortal beings are not truly immortal. I've not been completely honest with you, but their drive to persist comes not from a fear of death, but an intrigue with a system they can never truly hope to engage with to its fullest. The flower Tao from which they originate is artificial in nature, and because of this, they're near perfect immortal beings, but have ultimately reached the apex of their evolution, stuck in stagnation in a way that the main characters are not limited to. The potential of humanity being tested against the refinement of perfection, something that is explored much more deeply in Season 2. If Season 1 was a crash course on Tao, Season 2 is a string of advanced lessons, refining its use and turning it into a reliable weapon against the Tensen. As I said earlier, the basis of the Hell's Paradise storyline is the observations of the characters. They learn as they fight, and they're constantly learning from what may as well be a completely new world. With Season 2 comes the advent of type advantages in Tao. Yeah, kinda like the ones from Pokemon, and this only deepens the combat, adding yet another layer of strategy on top of the matchups. Now, along with physical battles with abilities, strength, and speed, it becomes a dance as characters learn to fight around their imperfections, and the humans in particular are desperately fighting to understand how to get the most out of themselves in the middle of combat. Tamiya Gantetsusai is the most striking example of this. Originally believing Tao to be too complicated for him to learn, as he fights, he feels the influence of Tao on his combat, and desiring the opportunity to learn more, he rips his own eye out, choosing to fight with less to see more, similar to Shion, though that wasn't really his choice in that case. This shift happens with almost every character over the course of Hell's Paradise. This is a group of people who are engaging with something beyond their understanding to fight beings that shouldn't exist. And the strength of this narrative lies with its power system, creating goalposts, applying dynamics onto combat to force development, and creating a basis on which the entire world of the narrative stands. Tao makes Hell's Paradise deeper, but does it make it better? Hell's Paradise is, in my opinion, one of the best new-gen anime on the market. Boasting beautiful animation and an astounding soundtrack, it's definitely a sight for sore eyes. But beyond pure aesthetics, the world building and character development is magnificent, and masterclass writing is enough to keep audiences coming back week after week. So where does the power system fall in with all of this? Hell's Paradise needs its power system because it is its power system. The basis of the narrative, the driving factor for each and every one of the protagonists, it's all about Tao and how the characters choose to engage with it. It's a method of progression. As the narrative develops and strengthens, so does Tao. As the fights increase in scale, Tao scales to match, because ultimately, Tao is more than just an ability to punch people harder. It's true strength, albeit a different kind. Tao is more than just a superpower. For these characters, it is a new way of life. My name is John Sage, and thanks for watching.